Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Katja, also known as Kat, and throughout July I shared a series of videos to help you plan your reading for our Reading the Globe Women in Translation August celebration. And we have one dedicated group read and 4 optional prompts. And I've linked my co-hosts' channels, Roz and Angélica, in the description below. Between the 3 of us, I think we have managed to assemble a wonderfully varied collection of recommendations. But we all know recommendations are easy. It's choosing what we will actually read that's far trickier. And I had to think a long time about this, but I'm sharing the books that have made it into my final reading stack. So, first up, we've got the group read, of course. That's the fixed point. It is The Door by Hungarian author Magda Szabo and translated by Len Rix. And it won our community poll by 41% of the vote and should be an excellent live show discussion coming in September as well, because Roz, Angélica, and I will be discussing the book during our live show wrap up in September, where we hope you can join us and share your experience of it. At the center of the novel is a relationship between a writer and her formidable, enigmatic housekeeper, Emerence, who gradually becomes indispensable to the writer and her household. Their relationship develops into something involving friendship, dependence, loyalty, power, and betrayal. I am trying not to learn too much more about it before reading it because I really think that it's going to be something that unfolds brilliantly. I've heard that Len Rix's English translation has helped establish The Door as one of Szabo's best known works among English language readers. For the first prompt, to read a woman author from another continent, I am traveling from Europe to Asia, beginning with Japan and Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami, translated by Asa Yoneda. And this was shortlisted for last year's International Booker Prize. And I'd bought it, but then I didn't manage to read it in time before the winner was announced. It had been shortlisted. It then slipped from the top of my TBR, and this month is a perfect reason for me to make it a priority again for women in translation. The novel unfolds across interconnected episodes spanning vast periods of geological time, and humanity is approaching extinction, surviving in small isolated communities, and being overseen by artificial intelligence and genetically engineered beings. As humanity changes biologically and socially, the book appears to explore what might remain recognizably human: attachment, reproduction, memory, consciousness, and the impulse to connect with one another. So I've previously read Kawakami's The Third Love and The 10 Loves of Mr. Nishino, and I enjoyed the way both books created a large story through smaller interconnected narratives. But somehow I always felt really distanced from her characters. I can see and appreciate what she's doing, but I don't always feel emotionally close to it. So I wonder, will it be the same this time around, especially given the scope? Or will examining human life from so far away reveal something unexpectedly intimate? We'll see. So now I could have moved on to the next prompt, but I thought, let me stay in this prompt and balance it out with something cozy. And went with The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park by Michiko Aoyama and translated by Takami Nieda. At the bottom of an apartment block is an amusement park with a hippo-shaped, or rather a playground with a hippo-shaped attraction called Kabahiko. Local people believe that if you touch a corresponding part of Kabahiko's body, he might help you heal whatever is hurting in yours. So the book follows several residents who visit him while struggling with different parts of their lives. And through their stories, it explores self-acceptance, community, perspective, and the way people can help each other begin again. And I enjoy this style of Japanese cozy fiction. While the stories are usually uplifting, I don't expect that they're going to avoid sadness or difficulty, because this sort of fiction usually acknowledges pain but makes room for kindness, change, and community to become part of the response to that pain. So I think prompt 1 has let me choose 2 different visions of connection, one asking what human connection might become thousands of years into the future, and the other one placing it in an ordinary neighborhood here and now when we can make the most of our existing connection or ability to connect. So prompt number 2 is to read a woman author who has written a genre novel. So for the genre prompt, I have chosen Kalpa Imperial, The Greatest Empire That Never Was, by Argentine author Angélica Gorodischer, and it is translated from Spanish by Ursula K. Le Guin. And this is a fantasy novel. But although it's a novel, it doesn't follow one conventional hero or continuous plot. Instead, multiple storytellers recount episodes from the history of a vast imaginary empire that has repeatedly risen, collapsed, transformed. Across 11 chapters, fairy tales, political commentary, oral history, and fantasy, gradually building the history of this unnamed empire. Beggars become emperors, democracies become dictatorships, and historical events eventually pass into legend. So it sounds fragmented, but it is also very clearly speculative fiction fantasy. And I bought the book in 2024, and the more that I, was considering it for the recommendation video of a genre novel, I wondered how I've left it unread for so long. Prompt number 3, to read a work that isn't a novel by a woman in translation. And I chose 3 short story collections. I mean, I wanted to choose just one, but then I couldn't make up my mind. So the first one that I went with, or rather, the reason I couldn't make up my mind is because they have very different approaches to the short form. The first one is Your Utopia, which I had sort of talked about when we were talking about books that are not novels or works that are not novels. So Bora Chung, I know her from Cursed Bunny, so I am prepared for stories that may be funny, weird, or outright disturbing on the scale, from mild to extra. So Your Utopia continues that sort of style, but goes into horror and science fiction. And stories will include technology, artificial intelligence, mortality, and dystopia. Its characters and narrators include humans, machines, and other unexpected forms of consciousness. But the emotional concerns remain recognizable. So, loneliness, work, love, loss, and the hope that a better world is still possible. And I think this could be a really interesting conversation in my mind if I read it alongside Under the Eye of the Big Bird. So, we'll see. Both books appear to examine artificial intelligence and the future of humanity, but I think Bora Chung will do it with a lot more considerable dark humor. The next book is 13 Months of Sunrise. It is a collection of short stories by Sudanese author Rania Mamoun and translated from Arabic by Elisabeth Jaquette. This debut collection blends realistic and imagined elements to create a portrait of contemporary Sudanese urban life. Stories about isolation, estrangement, hunger, grief, unexpected friendship, and encounters between people who might otherwise remain invisible to one another. And I'm really drawn to it because it sounds both socially observant and intimate. The third is Young at the Time by Eileen Chang and translated by Karen S. Kingsbury and Zhang. The stories explore memory, love, chance, and the uncertainty that develops when something once interpreted as fate begins to look rather different with time. And I have been meaning to read more of Eileen Chang, and the small or slim collection feels like a good way to return to her work. And other than that, I don't really know what to expect, which I kind of like. So I didn't pick a work of poetry for this prompt, but I wanted to highlight a useful free resource, the Poetry Translation Center, an online archive of poems in translation. And when you filter the archive, you see the original language in the left side of the screen, and you get the translation on the right. So you can filter by language, and it's really useful. They translate contemporary poetry from Africa, Asia, Latin America. And you'll find the link for the archive in the video description. So you do not necessarily need to buy another book to participate. Sometimes you can find short stories and poetry and plays online as well. And now the final prompt to read a backlist book. I have gone with Cocoon by Zhang Yuran and translated by Jeremy Tiang. And this book has been sitting on my e-reader from 2023. A few other people in our community have also been meaning to read Cocoon, so we created an additional discussion area for it on the Reading the Globe Discord. The novel follows childhood friends. I just have to let the dog in. Okay, so where was I? I think I was at childhood friends. So Cheng Gong and Li Jia Jie, who reunite as adults and begin tracing a mystery connecting their families to an event in 1967. And as they investigate the secrets inherited from their parents and grandparents, we discover personal and generational consequences from Chinese cultural revolution. It's told through two intertwined stories and considers memory, friendship, trauma, silence, and historical dramas that can shape people's current lives. So we are the product of events that we have not directly experienced. And I like that idea. I've heard very good things about this book, but it is also one I have repeatedly postponed because it does sound emotionally demanding. Having other readers alongside me and a dedicated place to discuss it makes it feel like a really good opportunity to stop postponing it. Cocoon will also provide a contrast to the science fiction themed reads on my list, because rather than racing ahead into possible futures, we're looking back and entering histories that may not have been part of our own education and seeing how larger political events continue inside individual families. Yeah, and aside from Women in Translation, I have got a continuation of me reading Men of Maize by Miguel Angel Asturias, our classic group read for Reading the Globe in July. It's been a real brain teaser of a book and raised lots of interesting discussion about Guatemalan literature and the process of translation. I think I'm one of the slowest readers of this one. Usually I'm sort of like at the middle or at the top of it. And I know it's not a race, but I was like, God, you know what? I feel really slow with this book. But there is so much to process. But it's still enjoyable as long as you're in that mind space where you're happy to unpick things slowly and you can lean into the beauty of the language and also embrace the really vague portions, or not vague, the bit mysterious. I wish I could think of a better word, but it is difficult to pass sometimes. So, yeah, but beautiful. And like I say, it has raised a lot of discussion about Guatemalan literature and the process of translation. So I'm now looking forward to my selection for Women in Translation. It's got variety. I have a Hungarian psychological classic. Well, we all have because that's a group read. Japanese vision of the future, a community finding comfort beside a playground hippo, the rise and fall of an imaginary empire, speculative stories from South Korea, portraits of contemporary Sudan, intimate short stories from one of China's most acclaimed 20th century writers, and a novel examining the inherited consequences of the Cultural Revolution in China. So, Women in Translation is a chance to explore not one genre, not a particular aesthetic or shelf of only serious literary novels with tastefully beige covers. It's fantasy, science fiction, cozy fiction, historical reckoning, psychological drama, short stories, poetry, and everything else in between. I wonder if I said some of those twice, but anyway, it's a celebration. And there's so much to discover. Let me know what you're reading this August. Are you joining Women in Translation? And if so, are you completing all 4 prompts, concentrating on 1 or 2, or joining us just for the group read, The Door? I'd love to know. Now, Roz, Angélica, and I will return in September for our wrap up of the event and the discussion of The Door, the group read. Until then, I hope you find something absorbing, surprising, and entirely outside your usual reading habits. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.